I'll do very brief remarks.
Recording in progress.
Forward a very ambitious capital plan, and we're a government that believes in getting shovels in the ground. So what we've done here today with the introduction of the bill is expedite the EA process on the Highway 413 Bradford bypass and Garden City Skyway. So what we have done is we've created a building highways priority act, which allows us to ultimately designate those three projects for 24/7 construction once they are procured. It allows us to exempt ourselves from early works EA, which continues to be an extensive process. We've seen 20 plus years of studies done on the 413. This is another step forward in making sure we get shovels in the ground, and then ultimately also focusing our efforts on the removal of bike lanes where there has been traffic lanes that have been taken away. So if you travel downtown, we know that Gridlock is an all-time high. It takes longer than ever before to get to and from where you need to go. And we believe that the bike lanes have taken away significant parts of the road, almost 50% in some certain cases, and unfortunately made it even harder to get around the city. So this is really a focus from our perspective on ensuring that we can build Ontario, make the investments that we need, and support transit across, and support building highways, transit, and reducing gridlock across the province.
They requested.
Okay.
Okay, I think the camera's good.
We're good. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, with that, I will go to questions. So first, I will go to Sarah with VIP.
Thanks, Shannon. Hello, Minister. Our question is about the bike lane. So it not only impact the traffic, but also it's about safety issues. So could you talk about a bit of our government's plan to review or approve the bike lanes in big cities such as Toronto, Markham, and Mississauga and Brampton? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah, for that question. Look, we know that what's really happened here is that during the pandemic, when not many people were driving, across the province, people removed, cities, municipalities removed significant amount of lanes of traffic and put in bike lanes. What we also see is not a huge use of these bike lanes in many of these places. For example, I was at Bloor Street, on Bloor Street in downtown Toronto, close to Etobicoke, that leads into Toronto. We stood there for almost 10 minutes and not a single bike went by. There's periods of which 24 hours, 9 cyclists went by and 10 snowplows went through those same bike lanes. So for us, it's not about being anti-bike lane, it's about having a reasonable approach. So if you're removing 2 lanes of traffic for 10 bikes in a 24-hour period, it just doesn't make sense. It makes everyone's commute longer. And so we want to look at the data. We know that people can't drive bikes in the winter for the most part. Very few people do. So it doesn't make sense for us to rip open all of our lanes of traffic, cause more congestion. It doesn't. So we're in the process of reviewing all the ones that have been put in the last 5 years. Our target in Toronto is University, Bloor, and Yonge Street to see, what can we do as a first step to get traffic flowing a bit easier on those. And we've seen, population has increased, traffic has increased, and the bike lanes aren't helping us in that regard. And so we have to have a reasonable approach to it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next, I will go to Nitin at Prime Asia.
Thank you, Shannon. Good afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon, Nitin. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Minister, first of all, very good announcement by your ministry that after getting a G license, one has to wait 1 year to get a commercial license. This kind of announcement was pending since a long time. So my question is, any update do you have, as we discussed before also, any legislation coming to ban the visitors getting commercial license? And also, any comments you want to make on the recent report by the CBC also, in which lots of truck driving schools, they are getting cash paid and giving truck driving licenses without any proper system they are operating, or fraudulently? Anything you want to make comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Nitin. On the first question, I think that 1 year, so what we have is a motion on the floor of the House that will be debated in the coming days with respect to MPP Amarjot Sandhu on strengthening commercial driver licenses, making sure people have that experience. So to your question on how do we come to a solution on those who are here illegally or those who are driving illegally, basically, if you have to have 1 year's worth of experience on Canadian roads before you can get into a commercial license, that will eliminate anybody that is here on a temporary visa or on a visitor visa, because they wouldn't be able to show that they've held a G license for a year. So this requirement will completely wipe out anyone that is driving fraudulently or driving without a permit or driving without the necessary requirements that will be set out by the ministry moving forward. So I think it's very important to know that not only are we strengthening commercial vehicle driving through this proposed motion for everyone, but it also targets very specifically anyone that might be in the province without the proper experience or paperwork. And on the marketplace, yeah, your second question on the marketplace, we have zero tolerance for that. There have been 6 individuals that have been terminated from drive test upon investigation. We also have an OPP investigation ongoing with our fraud department to understand and appreciate and investigate who are some of these people that are doing this. So we are, and if any of your viewers continue to have information of people trying to sell licenses or illegally use, we will gladly act to give that information to the OPP investigative unit that is currently reviewing this criminal activity. We have shut down multiple schools across the province through the inspectors at MCU, and we will continue to enforce very heavily and have zero tolerance for anyone that's breaking the rules or not teaching the actual classes in a way that they should. And we'll continue to improve enforcement and continue to look at other ways in which we clamp down even harder on those that are not supporting or following the rules.
Minister, can I get a clarification on the first answer? So if anyone comes as a visitor to Canada, so he can get the G license because he's already eligible. Visitors are getting the G license. So means on a visitor visa, he can drive for 1 year as a visitor. Then after 1 year, he will be eligible on a visitor status to get a commercial license. Please.
If he doesn't have a work permit, he would not be allowed to. Okay. If an individual has a work permit after a year, then that, legally, there would be no right. But if for that 1 year period, they do not have any and say they were here illegally, they would not be able to drive any sort of commercial vehicle and not be able to test in the system for a year. But once somebody obtains a legal work permit and they've accomplished their 1 year, then at a drive test or when they go for that examination, they would be allowed to do their test.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
right.
They have to have valid. Yeah.
All right, thanks. Next, I'm going to go to Lynn with Yes My Radio.
Thank you, Shannon. Good afternoon, Minister. My question is, as mentioned, that certain early works on Highway 413 will be exempt from the traditional assessment process. Could you clarify which specific areas or projects will be exempt and how the government is determining that these have minimal environmental impacts? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we will continue to follow all the environmental rules. What we do know is for 20 plus years, their environmental assessments have been going on. We've done, countless public consultations since 2007, 2009. I've reviewed documents, over 200 pages on environmental impacts. What we can't do is continue to wait. We need to make sure we get shovels in the ground. And so as we move towards early works, we will designate certain areas where we know we can start construction on the 413 and earlier than scheduled. And we will look to get shovels in the ground in those spaces and start building the highway. So in the coming weeks and months, as this legislation passes, as we get this authority, we will have more information as to where exactly those early work projects will be located across the province. And so lots more work to do, but we want to make sure that we're not leaving anything on the table. And that's why we are moving forward very quickly with this new legislation. It's actually the same way that we did the transit. So when we built the Ontario Line Scarborough Subway Extension Line, we also introduced priority legislation that allowed us to expedite both environmental and other measures to allow us to build faster. And ultimately, the more people that spend time in gridlock, the more people that spend time, stuck behind a wheel, it's also very bad for the environment and something that we need to make sure that we reduce. And so that's why we're moving faster and faster with the Highway 413 and also designating it for 24/7 construction.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, I am going to go to Rami with Oxygen.
Thank you, Minister, for this meeting. And actually, I would like to ask about the electric cars. We all know that it is the future of the cars and automobiles in Canada and North America, while we have some weird accident today for were being killed because of a malfunction of the batteries. And actually, there are several incidents happens every now and then. I'm not sure if the Ministry of Industry or your ministry can do some precautions to prevent such incidents which people are killed. And are there any plans to make the robot taxi, which without a driver, available on the roads? Are there any timing to do that? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So I know very unfortunate news this morning of the incident that you're talking about, the crash that happened. Now the car hit into a pole, and then that caused the car to go on fire, and 3 individuals were, I think, pronounced deceased, and one had survived in hospital with critical injuries. So look, on the safety of the roads, we're always looking at whatever we can do to make them safer. We brought in stiffer penalties on careless driving, stuck driving, but ultimately we need to make sure people are being safe, that they drive safely. Personal behavior and responsibility is key in this. I think to your last point about was it autonomous vehicles? I think or was it autonomous vehicles or like?
Yes, this is the self-drive or the no driver Tesla, in which is the robotics, in which taxi and Ubers will be without drivers. So when it will be permitted on Ontario.
So this is something that we're following very closely. Right now, we don't permit fully autonomous. What we do have is some pilot programs we're working with. So for example, on commercial vehicles where we platoon them. So there might be 3-4 in a row, testing them on our highways, but there's a driver, even if it's autonomous, there has to be a driver in the seat. I think one of the things that we have to just very carefully examine is, if you look at Phoenix, if you look at San Francisco, they're experimenting with us right now with the driverless vehicles. So for us, we just need to be very certain about the safety. Toronto has some very different climate. We can have snow, we can have rain, we can have ice. And so we have to be sure that when these vehicles are driving autonomously, that they can adapt to those conditions, that the vehicles can adapt to those conditions, that when vehicles get snowed on, cameras get snowed on, they can still adapt to those conditions. So, Ontario is always at the forefront of innovation, but we also have to make sure that we're doing so in a safe manner. So we'll continue to pilot a lot of these projects, but most importantly, make sure that we work in a way that keeps Ontarians and drivers safe. And so, we love to see the technology that's coming out right now. in all across the world, and in autonomous vehicles and EV vehicles. We've attracted $70+ billion to Ontario in direct foreign investment in the last couple of years. And so we're very excited for the future, and we'll work with the industry and communities to come up with a safe and reliable plan.
Are there any time frame to decide whether you can implement it or not?
So we don't have a specific date. We're currently reviewing data, and we're currently running pilot programs right now. So in the future, we will have a date, and we'll continue to release the information on the studies that are occurring and on the work that we are doing. And so right now, the pilot is ongoing, and it is for a 10-year period. And once that 10-year period is complete, we will move forward to the next phase and look at it more broadly from a general public perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Jasmine with Y Media.
Hello, Minister. This is Jasmine from Y Media for Channel Y. My question to you is a little different. Last time during our media roundtable, I asked you about the cost and the timeline for the tunnel project. So it remains the same. Do you have any update? I'm sure there are some developments. So if you can provide me some details about the cost estimate and what is the appropriate time, approximate timeline for the project start date or end date.
Yeah, so we started the feasibility study right now. There's going to be a public procurement that we can give you more details on in the next coming weeks that helps us study the feasibility. So we're not only using our internal expertise, we're actually going to seek external expertise. And so in a very short period of time, we will announce that public procurement of design work, of detail work, of the feasibility study work that we can all work together on to understand and appreciate what needs to happen. But one thing is sure, from a costing perspective, $11 billion to the economy and lost productivity. So we need to build. So that's why we're building the 413, the Bradford bypass, and looking at a project like the tunnel. And so we'll have more to say on it as we move through the process. Right now, we're actively working within MTO, and we'll be seeking external expertise in the coming days through a public procurement, which we will announce to the media and everyone else when that is ready to go.
Sure. And just a follow-up on my question. Do you have any study on how many lanes we are proposing for this project? Normally Ontario has 6 to 8 lane highways. So for that, and what would be the stretch? Initially we decided for Mississauga to Scarborough. So what will be the stretch of the highway if there is any changes on that? Yeah.
So currently the feasibility will look at that full stretch. So the entire area under the 401. And ultimately, we will also look at, I think your other part of the question was the length and then the lanes. Sorry, it would be at least 6 lanes is what we would look towards in the feasibility study. But, more of these details will be answered as we go through the study, as we understand and appreciate what's underground and what's underneath in the system. And so that will continue to work through this process.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. That was the last question that I had. Unless somebody else had another question. Otherwise, I think that we can wrap up if Minister Sarkaria, you had any closing words.
No, I think that's great. Thank you so much to everyone. Look, our government is committed to building Ontario. We're committed to ensuring that, this province, we are not just looking at the next 2 years, 3 years, we're looking at the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. The previous Liberal government didn't build. They didn't build the infrastructure. They didn't build highways. They didn't build subways. That is why we're seeing so much gridlock today. And Premier Ford and our government said we need to take action. That's why we're building, $70 billion worth of public transit in the next 10 years, like the Ontario line, Scarborough subway extension, Finch West LRT, and then also the Hazel-McCallion line in Brampton, Mississauga, but also doing projects like the tunnel, doing projects like the 413 and Bradford bypass. So with that, I want to just thank all of you for joining. Appreciate you being here, and a big thank you to you, Shannon, for organizing this.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I hope
Happy
you
birthday.
have a good afternoon. Take care.
Happy birthday, Shannon.
Thank you.
Is that your birthday today?
No, it's not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.